They say after 30 years together, you start to finish each other's sentences. Maybe that's true for some people. For me and Tracy, it had turned into a different kind of knowing. We could read each other's silences. The way she pushed her food around when something was bothering her. The way I pretended not to notice when it was about me. That night, the house was quiet. Kids grown, dinner long done. Tracy lit a candle in the bedroom, one of those lavender ones she used to save for special nights. She'd lost weight lately, gotten into yoga, switched her wine for protein shakes. I thought maybe it was midlife health kicking in. Maybe she wanted to feel young again. We were under the covers, warm, tangled, and I was just starting to think maybe things were turning around for us. Then she said it. "You're so much better than the others." She said it like a compliment, like it was going to make me proud. I pulled back a little, my body still close to hers, but my mind suddenly a mile away. "What others?" I asked, not with anger, just curiosity. Too calm, maybe. She laughed lightly, rolled away toward her nightstand. "I mean, other men. Guys I knew before you." But she'd never said anything like that in 29 years. And the way she said it, fast, too polished, it felt rehearsed. Like she'd been waiting to use that line but didn't expect it to slip out right then. I laid there for a while, listening to her breath go soft and slow. Sleep took her easy. I envied that. I stared at the ceiling and ran the clock backward. Tracy had joined that new gym 3 months ago. A boutique place, not the chain one we used to go to. She started dressing better, wearing tighter jeans, more makeup. Just enough to look like she wasn't trying, which meant she was. She said she was going to networking events, closing more deals, getting out there. Realtor hustle, she called it. I believed her at first. I was working longer hours myself, teaching 2 seminars a week and consulting on top of my university schedule. I figured it was good we were both busy. But that comment, it was like hearing a fire alarm and realizing it had been chirping for weeks. You just finally tuned into it. After she fell asleep, I padded down to the den, poured a 2-finger glass of Basil Hayden and sat in the leather chair that still smelled like cigar smoke from New Year's. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I just stared into the whiskey and thought. She'd never been that generous with compliments. Tracy was the type to show appreciation by action. Packing lunches, folding laundry sharp-cornered, making sure I had socks without holes. That kind of woman. She wasn't the type to whisper pillow talk like that unless something was off. Unless there was someone else she was measuring me against. I'd been faithful for 29 years. Never once strayed. I could count on one hand the number of times I'd even let a thought linger when someone flirted. I'm not some saint, but I took my vows seriously. So if she was comparing me now, I opened my laptop, pulled up our Verizon account, started looking at call logs. Nothing obvious, but a lot of short, repeated numbers clustered in the late afternoon. Blocked numbers. VoIP? Maybe. I jotted them down on a yellow notepad. Still didn't mean anything. Not yet. Then I remembered Darren, the gym trainer Tracy wouldn't shut up about. She said he was brutally honest and inspirational. Called him a beast once when we were having wine with friends. I'd laughed it off. But now, it hit different. And Carl, her new business partner, he'd been coming up a lot in conversation too. Always a text from him at dinner, always a meeting, a deal, an open house. I'd met him once. Tall, clean-shaven, cologne strong enough to be a second skin. The kind of guy who learned early on how to flash his smile like a weapon. And then there was that Fred guy from her office, the one with the fiancé. Tracy had gone on a weekend retreat with her firm last month. That was new. The company never did retreats in 28 years of her working there. I sipped the whiskey, tapped my pen. I wasn't mad. Not yet. But I was alert. There's a difference between anger and readiness. What I felt that night wasn't rage. It was the kind of still, cold focus you get before you gut a fish, when your hands move slow but your brain's sharp as hell. At 2:13 a.m., I opened a private browser window, searched for private investigators, discreet, local. 3 tabs later, I found a guy named Harrison Oates, former military intelligence, now worked quietly out of a converted barbershop downtown. His reviews were specific, too specific to be fake. I sent a brief message. Need verification of suspected infidelity. Multiple subjects. Will pay for speed and silence. Hit send. By the time I slipped back into bed, Tracy stirred, half asleep. You okay? She mumbled. I kissed her on the forehead. Yeah, I said. Just thinking. It's funny how lies dress up like routines. Tracy still kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work. Still texted me about what to pick up from the store. Still smiled across the dinner table like nothing was wrong. But I'd learned something over the years. People only smile like that when they're hiding something. Real happiness is quieter. What was she showing me now? That was a performance. The PI, Harrison, moved fast. Within 2 days, he'd done background checks on Carl Walters and Darren Knox, the gym trainer. Both clean on the surface. But Carl had a pattern. 2 past employers noted inappropriate conduct with coworkers in sealed HR memos. And Darren? He had a reputation with married clients. Harrison called it aggressive boundary pushing. Translation, he knew who to target. Tracy had both of them on speed dial. Friday afternoon, she breezed through the front door wearing that blazer she never buttoned. She used to wear it for closings. Now she wore it for Carl. Carl and I are meeting a couple tonight, she said, tossing her purse onto the couch. They're thinking of selling a place in Glenhaven. Could be a 6-figure commission. Where are you meeting them? I asked, setting my book down. She paused just long enough to register the question. Oh, Fiorenzo's. The Italian place. I nodded. Fancy place for a sales pitch. They're old money, she said quickly. I want to wine and dine, right? Old money. In Glenhaven. I didn't argue. Want me to come? I said casually. I know those property lines in Glenhaven. Could help close the deal. She laughed. Too hard. You'd be bored out of your mind. Besides, it's all small talk and wine and awkward flirting to get them relaxed. Awkward flirting? She caught herself. I mean, that realtor charm. It's harmless. Yeah. Harmless. Like a loaded gun sitting on the kitchen table. She disappeared into the bedroom to change. I waited 5 minutes, then followed her quiet footsteps upstairs. Watched from the cracked door as she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her bra, reapplying lipstick, spraying perfume on the back of her thighs. Not exactly how she got ready for business meetings in the past. She left at 6 sharp, heels clicking, not a care in the world. I gave it 15 minutes, then texted Harrison. Follow her. Fiorenzo's. Red Infinity. She's meeting Carl. I didn't go to Fiorenzo's. I didn't need to see it. I'd lived long enough to know that truth always finds you. It just depends whether you're ready for it. Instead, I poured another whiskey and sat in the kitchen, staring at Tracy's empty wine glass from last night, lipstick still on the rim. At 9 p.m., Harrison sent me a photo. Carl and Tracy at the table. 2 wine glasses, no sign of clients. Her hand on his wrist. Her blazer off. Her smile was wide and lazy. No portfolio. No house documents. Just 2 people having a date they weren't calling a date. Another text followed. Left together. His hand on her lower back. Heading to his car. No need to ask what happened next. I didn't scream. Didn't flip the table or throw a chair through the window. Instead, I got up and washed her glass. Put it back in the cabinet. Then I walked into the garage, pulled down the dusty old storage bin labeled tax docs, and started filing away the evidence. Emails, photos, PI reports, timeline notes, a copy of her gym contract, Carl's HR complaints, Darren's flirt text Tracy left open on the iPad once by accident. She thought I was the fool in the equation. The quiet professor who wouldn't notice, wouldn't act, wouldn't strike. But I was raised differently. My father used to say, when a snake slides into your house, you don't scream. You close the door behind it. By the time Tracy walked in at 11:12 p.m., smelling like sweat and expensive cologne, I had already emailed my lawyer Marty to schedule a lunch. She tossed her heels near the door and padded in barefoot. Her cheeks flushed. Long night, she said, not meeting my eyes. They were tough clients. Bet they were, I said, pretending not to look up from the paper. She kissed me on the head like nothing happened. And I let her, because she wasn't going to see it coming. And when it landed, it was going to level her world. The manila envelope arrived at noon, hand-delivered to my office at the university. No return label, no unnecessary fanfare, just clean, quiet truth, sealed and waiting. I didn't open it right away. I taught my class first advanced logic and strategy. It was fitting. I spoke to 27 young minds about cause and consequence, about inference and motive, about how people lie with their eyes more than their words. Then I dismissed them early. Back at my desk, I locked the door, poured a coffee, and opened the envelope. Inside, still photos, time logs, transcribed text messages, GPS routes, and a final report from Harrison that read like a character obituary. My wife of 29 years had made her way through 3 men in the span of 5 months. Carl Walters. Multiple romantic dinners, recorded audio of them at his condo twice, including one time-stamped on our anniversary. Darren Knox. Private sessions at the gym, texts sent at 2 a.m., and a surveillance photo of Tracy letting him into the house while I was out of town for a seminar. And Fred Eastman, the fiancé of one of her co-workers. Harrison had video Tracy entering his hotel room during a real estate conference in Phoenix. She stayed for 46 minutes. Each detail was laid out clinically. It read like a lab report, except the subject wasn't a patient. It was my life. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I took a deep breath, leaned back in my chair, and closed the file. I'd been a loyal husband, a steady provider, and a patient man. That was my identity, my anchor. But sitting there, staring at the slow-motion demolition of my marriage, something hardened in me. This wasn't going to be about begging or screaming. This was going to be about precision. I called Marty Kramer, my oldest friend and one hell of a divorce lawyer. Marty had been with me since our undergrad days. Back then, he was the loudmouth who always got into bar fights and talked his way out. Now, he was a shark in a tailored suit with a Rolodex of judges and clerks that could rewrite your future by lunch. He picked up on the second ring. "Mark, it's been a long time. What's going on? I need to see you. Lunch. Today." He paused. "Do you want steak or silence?" "Silence," I said. Old Harbor Club, 1 p.m. I arrived with the envelope under my arm and a look Marty hadn't seen since the time I found a tenured colleague plagiarizing his grad student's work. He opened the file and flipped through it silently. When he got to the photos, he let out a low whistle. "She's been busy," he said deadpan. "Carl, Darren, and Fred? Jesus, this one's engaged." "I want it clean," I said. "No screaming matches. No social media trash fire. But I want full control of the assets. The house, retirement, the condo in Naples. I want it all positioned before she knows what's happening." Marty nodded. "You want to bury her with a handshake?" "No," I said, finishing my bourbon. "I want to leave her with nothing but the sound of the door closing." We spent the next hour planning. Tracy and I had never signed a postnup, but I'd handled most of our finances. Accounts were in my name or shared, never hers alone. I'd covered our taxes, our investments, even her brokerage license renewal. I knew where everything was, and now so did Marty. We prepped the divorce petition, attached copies of the investigator's report as exhibits, and scheduled a process server to deliver it to Tracy at home, Monday morning at 10 a.m. Why then? Because that's when she'd be fresh off the gym, coming home, tired and smug. That's when the illusion would still be intact, when she'd think the game was still hers to play. I didn't go home that night. I booked a room at the Hyatt and told Tracy I had late campus meetings. She didn't ask questions, probably happy to have the house to herself or to someone else. Sunday night, I stopped by just to grab some things. She greeted me at the door in leggings, fresh from yoga, kissed me like she hadn't spent the afternoon texting one of her boyfriends. "How was the seminar?" she asked. "Enlightening," I said. "Lots of clarity." She smiled. "I'm glad. You've been so tense lately." "I won't be much longer," I said and meant it. Monday morning, The sun cut clean through the front blinds just as Tracy came back from her workout. I watched from a distance, parked 2 streets over, sipping coffee in a beat-up flannel I hadn't worn since college. At 9:58 a.m., the process server, a woman in jeans and a hoodie, walked up to the front door like she was selling cookies. Tracy answered, ponytail wet, yoga mat still in her hand. The woman smiled. "Are you Tracy Holden?" Tracy nodded, and the envelope was in her hand before she could blink. "You've been served. Have a good morning." The door shut. I waited 10 minutes before heading home. I wasn't interested in drama. Not the kind with screaming and broken plates. I wanted something quieter, colder, more final. I parked in the driveway, walked through the front door, and heard it. Not crying. Laughter. Tracy was standing in the living room with the open envelope in her hand, shaking her head like someone watching a sitcom. "This is a joke," she said. "Right? You had somebody write this up to scare me?" I dropped my keys on the counter. "Keep reading." She flipped a page, then another. Her mouth started to tighten. The names hit her like a series of punches: Carl, Darren, Fred. Dates, addresses, hotel receipts, photos. Her voice cracked. "You went through my phone?" "Nope." "You, what, hired someone?" I didn't answer. I just leaned against the fridge and looked at her like I was watching a stranger slowly come into focus. Her hands trembled now. "You spied on me?" "I investigated," I said, calm as winter. It's what a smart man does when his wife starts talking in her sleep and calling gym sessions business meetings. Her face twisted. "You're overreacting. This isn't what it looks like." "No." I pulled a second envelope from my jacket, copies of the texts with Darren. "Is this not you asking him to meet at our house while I was at the faculty retreat?" She didn't answer. "And this?" I laid down a photo of her kissing Carl outside his condo. "Was that just networking?" Her voice rose, shrill now. "So what? You're gonna ruin our whole life over a few mistakes?" "No," I said. "You already did that." She threw the papers across the floor. "You think you're so perfect? So above it all? You've been distant for years. You buried yourself in lectures and conferences and left me starving for attention." I nodded slowly. "And your solution was to screw your way through my trust?" That shut her up. Her chest heaved. She was shaking, not from rage, but panic. "What about the kids?" she snapped. "You're going to blow up their world just to make yourself feel like some tough guy?" I stared at her. "You'll have a chance to explain it to them." I'm not saying a word. They're adults. They can decide what kind of woman raised them. That's when the cracks showed. The mask, polished, practiced, flawless, slipped. She sat down hard on the couch, like her knees just gave out. "Mark, please, don't do this." I stood still. She wasn't talking to me like a wife anymore. She was talking like someone who knew they'd lost leverage, like a criminal bargaining for leniency. "You always knew I could survive anything," I said. "I survived losing my brother in a car crash. I survived cancer at 42. I survived building this life from scratch. You really think I couldn't survive losing you?" Her face crumbled. I turned for the stairs. "I'll be gone by tomorrow. You can tell the kids whatever version of the story you like. I won't contradict you, but don't expect them to believe it for long." "Mark," she whispered, "don't leave me like this." I paused at the top of the stairs. "No, I'm not leaving you. I'm leaving the version of myself that tolerated you." I packed light, just what I needed to start over. No drama, no speech, just the dignity she'd forgotten I had. By evening, I was gone. And Tracy? She was still sitting on that couch, holding an empty envelope, realizing too late that everything had changed. The first grenade landed 4 days later. Allison, our youngest, texted me out of nowhere. "I can't believe you're doing this to Mom. You left without even trying to fix anything." Fix anything. As if I broke it. As if betrayal could be patched up with therapy and trust falls. I didn't reply right away. I stared at her message until the words started to lose meaning. Then I set my phone down, took a breath, and poured a cup of black coffee. No sugar, no cream, Just like I drank it the week I buried my father, bitter and grounding. She was 23. I just graduated. Still called Tracy Mommy in birthday cards. She didn't know what her mother had done. Not really. Tracy had gotten to her first. That afternoon, Allison called. Her voice was sharp and fast, like she'd rehearsed. You blindsided her, she snapped. She said you've been cold for years, and that she tried everything. You just walked away without explanation. That's not what a husband does. I waited, let her get it out. Then I spoke. I'm not going to defend myself, I said. But if you're ready to hear facts instead of feelings, I'll tell you what really happened. Silence on the other end. Tracy cheated, I continued. Not once. Not with one man. 3. She scoffed. Mom said you'd say that. She said you were always jealous and paranoid. I have photos, Allison. Documents. I hired a private investigator. I have time-stamped footage. Hotel records. Texts. It's not paranoia. It's evidence. Her voice softened just a notch. Why didn't you show me this before? Because I wanted you to come to me when you were ready to hear the truth. Not when you were looking to pick a side. I heard her breathing. Deep, angry breaths. The kind you take when your reality starts slipping. Carl Walters. Darren Knox. Fred Eastman. I said, flat and even. Look up the names. Ask around. Or ask your mom if she still wants to lie when the names are in the open. She hung up. I didn't chase it. Truth doesn't need to be shouted. That evening, I got a call from Barb, Tracy's mother. A woman who once told me I was too serious for her daughter, but who never missed a birthday or a holiday. She was crying. She told me it was your fault, Barb whispered. Said you shut her out. That you gave up on her. Do you believe that? I asked. Long pause. I saw the papers, she said. She didn't expect me to, but they were on the kitchen counter. I saw the names, the photos, and I remembered the day she told me she was going to a work retreat in Phoenix. I asked who was organizing it. She changed the subject. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Mark. You didn't deserve this. I swallowed hard. None of us did. Barb asked if she could come visit. I said of course. We sat in my apartment. 2 people who used to call each other family, now bound by something else entirely. Betrayal in the bloodline. She told me stories I never knew. Tracy's high school flings, how she always needed attention, how she hated being alone. She used to tell me you were too calm, Barb said. Too hard to read. I used to think that was a strength. It is, she said. But people like Tracy, they see calm as distance. They confuse restraint for weakness. And when they don't feel adored, they start shopping for someone who will. We sat in silence for a while. Just before she left, Barb turned at the door. I know it's not my place anymore, but if the girls call me, I'll tell them the truth. Thank you, I said. Allison didn't call again for 3 weeks. When she finally did, her voice was quieter. I talked to Grandma. I waited. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but I'm not mad at you anymore. That's enough for now, I said, because it was. Truth doesn't ask for instant reconciliation. It waits, and when it's patient enough, it wins. The final court date was uneventful. Just papers, signatures, a judge with a tired face and a half-eaten sandwich tucked behind his computer monitor. Tracy didn't look at me once. She wore a gray dress that used to be tight, now hanging off her like a deflated balloon. The weight loss had accelerated, but it wasn't from the gym anymore. Stress chews through vanity quicker than age ever could. We signed. It was over. 29 years reduced to a handshake and a stamp. I walked out of that courthouse 120 pounds lighter, give or take. And I don't mean body fat. That night, Marty took me to the bar near campus. Davis's, the kind of place with pool tables, peanut shells on the floor, and bourbon that burned the way life used to. You know you just became a hot commodity, right? He said, sipping from a glass that barely touched his lips. What? Aging professors are suddenly in fashion? You've got your own house, a pension, a brain, a beard, and no baggage. You're the holy grail to every single woman over 40 with a bad dating history. I smirked. Sounds like a rescue mission. No, he said. Sounds like you get to have fun for once. I didn't dive in right away. I'm not the apps and pickup lines type. But women noticed. They noticed when I started showing up to department events without a ring. When I dropped 10 pounds, started shaving more often, ironed my shirts with more care. Confidence doesn't arrive in a chariot. It sneaks in quietly, like blood returning to a limb that's been asleep too long. Judy was the first. She worked in the finance office, widowed 5 years, sharp tongue, warm eyes. We'd shared lunches before, but now the air felt different. Charged. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee after work. I said yes. That led to dinner, then a weekend trip to the lake, then waking up next to someone who actually asked how I slept. And meant it. Judy didn't need saving. She wasn't broken, just open. With her, I rediscovered things I'd written off years ago. Laughing at stupid movies, cooking breakfast in nothing but boxers, holding hands in public. Slow, confident, unhurried sex, the kind that didn't feel like a negotiation. But it wasn't just her. There were others. A professor from the art department, a divorced nurse I met at a charity event. Even my mechanic sister, who left her number on my windshield one day after noticing me in the lobby. I didn't chase. I didn't play games. I didn't lie. I just showed up, calm, steady, and unbothered. And that, it turns out, is rare. Each woman taught me something. Some stayed a few weeks, some a few months. But I was never desperate, never clingy. I wasn't searching for a replacement for Tracy. I was just learning who I was without her orbit. People always talk about rediscovery after divorce like it's a spiritual retreat. It's not. It's remembering what it feels like to walk into your own home and not feel tension in your chest. It's opening the fridge and knowing every item in there was put there by you. It's being alone without being lonely. It's choosing every day not to be angry anymore, but not forgetting who made you this way. One night, Judy asked, "Do you ever talk to Tracy?" "No," I said. "Not unless it's about the kids." She paused. "Do you miss her?" I thought about that for a long second. No, I miss who I thought she was. And that was the truth. By the end of the year, I had a new rhythm. Mornings alone, evenings with company, sometimes Judy, sometimes a book, sometimes just a steak and an old Western playing in the background. I wasn't chasing youth. I was reclaiming peace, and it felt damn good. April's wedding was in late spring, under a stretch of clear blue sky that made everything feel like it was holding its breath. She married a good man, Michael, a quiet HVAC tech with strong hands and calm eyes, the kind of guy who listens more than he talks. I liked him immediately. The venue was simple, a vineyard just outside town, rows of green vines wrapping around white chairs and burlap runners. Rustic chic, they called it. To me, it just looked honest. I sat near the front in a dark suit that didn't quite fit the way it used to. Too much muscle in the shoulders, maybe. Or maybe I just stood taller these days. Tracy was there, of course. Hair lighter than I remembered, face tighter too, like she was trying to hold back time with makeup and prayer. She wore a floral dress that showed just enough skin to remind people she was still trying. Alone, unsurprisingly. We hadn't spoken since finalizing the house transfer. We kept it civil for the kids' sake. That was our only shared mission now. Show up, smile for the cameras, and pretend we didn't know each other's worst truths. But it was during the reception, when the band started playing the slow numbers, that I felt the shift. April approached me first. "You ready, Dad?" "For what?" "The dance. You didn't think you were getting out of it, did you?" I smiled, took her hand and walked to the floor. She leaned into me as the music played. "Thanks for not making this awkward. Your day, not mine. You look good," she said. "Better than I've seen you in years. Freedom suits me." She laughed and buried her face in my shoulder. I'd waited years to hear that laugh again. Not the polite kind, but the one that came from deep trust. We finished the dance, hugged, and I stepped aside. That's when Tracy came over. "I guess it's our turn," she said, tilting her head. "For old time's sake." I didn't argue. I offered my hand, and we walked to the floor as a soft country tune rolled in. She danced closer than necessary. "You've changed," she said. "You haven't." She stiffened slightly. "I didn't expect you to bounce back this fast." "Judy? Really? That didn't last," I said. "Oh," she smiled faintly. "So, no one serious?" I caught the tone. Curious, hopeful, something sad simmering just beneath the surface. "Not at the moment," I lied, because that moment wasn't about her. The real one happened 20 minutes later, near the bar. Wendy Adams. I hadn't seen her in years. She'd been part of our social circle once, back when kids were in diapers and PTA meetings filled our calendars. Her husband passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. She never remarried. She walked up holding a glass of white wine, wearing a navy dress and a quiet confidence that made the room dim around her. "Mark Holden," she said, smiling like she'd just remembered a joke only we knew. "You clean up nice." I chuckled. "You always knew how to time an entrance." We talked about April, about life, about how our kids turned out better than we probably deserved. It was light at first, then it wasn't. "You seem different," she said. "Lighter." I burned the weight off. She touched my forearm gently. "I always knew you were stronger than you let on." We didn't kiss that night. Not then. But the way she looked at me, with calm admiration and no pretense, it told me everything. Wendy wasn't curious about my pain. She wasn't looking for gossip or validation. She was just there. Tracy noticed. I caught her watching from across the lawn. Her mouth was tight. Her eyes follow Wendy like a threat. She had no claim anymore, but I knew that look. Regret. I didn't gloat, didn't nod or smile or try to win anything. I just turned back to Wendy and asked her if she liked salmon. She said yes. "Good," I said, "because I make a hell of a cedar-planked one." She grinned. "Are you inviting me over?" "Not tonight," I said, "but soon." She kissed me on the cheek and disappeared into the crowd. And just like that, something real had started. Not out of revenge, not out of loneliness, but out of the calm that comes when the storm finally passes and you realize you're still standing. Wendy and I didn't waste time. We'd both lived long enough to know what we wanted, and more importantly, what we'd never tolerate again. There were no games, no masked intentions, just real conversation, long walks, Sunday coffee that turned into brunch, and laughter that felt like it came from the marrow. A week after April's wedding, I invited her to my place for dinner. Cedar-planked salmon, just like I promised. Roasted potatoes, green beans, a bottle of dry white wine. She showed up early and offered to help. I handed her the knife and let her trim the ends off the beans while I seasoned the fish. The domesticity felt good, comfortable, earned. After dinner, we sat on the porch under a thin summer moon. The cicadas were humming low and steady in the trees, and her bare feet brushed against mine. "I never thought I'd get here again," she said, staring into her glass. To this point, feeling like life wasn't just something I had to survive. I reached over, took her hand. "You didn't just get here," I said. "You walked here, all on your own." She smiled, but I saw the flicker of something else. Something deeper. That quiet ache we all carry after losing too much. I've been holding on to something for a few days. Not nervous, just certain. When you've been burned, you learn the difference between impulse and clarity. I stood up and went back inside. When I came back out, I held a small, dark box in one hand and a bourbon in the other. Wendy raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Peace of mind," I said. I handed her the bourbon first. She took it with a confused laugh. Then I dropped to one knee, not dramatic, not flashy, just steady, like everything I'd done since the day Tracy tore it all down. "Marry me," I said, "not because I need saving, and not because you do, but because I've finally figured out what it means to choose someone, not out of habit, not out of fear, but because they make the quiet parts of life better." She blinked, then nodded, slow and sure. "Yes." The wedding was small and fast. Backyard ceremony. Barbecue after. My grandson threw flower petals, and Barb, yes, Tracy's mother, cried the whole way through. She hugged me afterward and whispered, "This time, you found the right one." I did. The photos were full of genuine smiles. Not plastered on social media grins, but the kind that crinkle the eyes and make shoulders relax. Tracy found out a week later. Allison told her. I didn't rub it in, but she called. Left a voicemail. No congratulations. Just 4 seconds of silence, and then, "I hope she knows what she's getting." I didn't call back, because Wendy knew exactly what she was getting. A man who'd been through hell, carried the weight, didn't flinch, didn't beg, and didn't break. Later that night, Wendy found me in the kitchen, washing up after the last of the guests had left. She slipped her arms around me from behind. "I don't care what anyone says," she whispered. "You're the best decision I've ever made." I turned around and kissed her slowly, my hand on the back of her neck. "You're the only decision I didn't second-guess." This time, there were no lies hiding in compliments. No shadows in the corners of our home. Just the kind of love that makes the past feel like another man's life. And I didn't miss it one damn bit. The porch creaked the same way it had for 30 years. Same knot in the wood near the railing. Same view of the old oak tree I planted when April was born. Time doesn't stop things from aging, it just teaches you what to hold on to. Wendy brought me a whiskey, neat, no ice. She kissed the top of my head, left the glass by my hand, and disappeared back into the house, where the grandkids were arguing over which movie to put on. It was one of those early autumn evenings in Ohio. The breeze had just enough bite to remind you summer was done, but the sky still held its color. I leaned back in the rocking chair and let the day settle into my bones. People always talk about revenge like it's fire. Flashy, destructive, immediate. But that's not what I wanted. What I wanted was this. Stillness. I hadn't seen Tracy in months. Not since Allison's baby shower. She came alone, stayed quiet, left early. Didn't speak to me except for a passing hello. But the way she looked at Wendy, like a woman watching someone else live the life she thought she'd never lose, that said more than words ever could. A few weeks ago, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked smaller. Not physically, just dimmed. Her hair grew out, roots showing. Dressed in flats and a cardigan that hung too loose around the shoulders. She approached me slowly, like someone approaching a grave. "I heard about your anniversary," she said. "Wendy seems good for you." "She is." She nodded, looked down at her hands. "I was stupid. I didn't answer. I thought I was missing something," she continued. "And then I realized too late. It was me who never had enough to begin with." She looked up, eyes wet. "I'm sorry." I gave a slow nod. "I know." That was all. No lectures. No forgiveness tour. Just a final flicker of truth between two people who had once called it love. Back on the porch, the kids burst out laughing inside. One of the twins shrieked about popcorn. Wendy told someone to put the dog out before it got into the trash again. My house was alive. Not with pretending. Not with the strained silence I'd lived with for years. But with peace. Real, earned, damn well-deserved peace. I took a sip of whiskey and watched the sun dip behind the maple trees lining the back fence. I didn't regret any of it. Not the pain, not the betrayal, not even the long nights I spent wondering where it all went wrong. Because I knew where it ended. Right here, on the porch, with a full heart, a clean conscience, and the knowledge that sometimes, just sometimes, losing everything you thought you needed is how you make room for the life you were meant to build.